on the way. All right, a lot to discuss there. We have Bradley Bowman with us. He's a senior director of the Center on Military and Political Power at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Bradley, great to have you with us here in the studio. Let's pick up on what we heard from John Kirby, that these air defense systems are on the way. But realistically, how quickly can they get to Ukraine? Can they get there in time to actually make a difference on the ground?
I think Ukraine needs all the air and missile defense capability they can get, and they can't get there soon enough. And frankly, even when they arrive, these 4 Patriot system and one other type of system will be laudable but insufficient. Russia is just pulverizing Ukraine, killing Ukrainian men, women, and children, devastating infrastructure. And in the last couple winters, they've tried to leave Ukrainians in the dark and cold. And it's just a brutal campaign. And we had this strike against the Children's Hospital. So this is just naked aggression at its worst. And I think everything NATO members can do to help Ukraine defend itself against this brutal, unprovoked invasion is laudable. But this will not be enough.
Let's go into a little bit more detail there, because it really is air defense that has become the main focus. Why is that? Is that Russia has dominated that space with drones, with missile strikes?
Yeah, no, Russia has a huge inventory, and they've benefited in a significant defense industrial base, and they've benefited from assistance from North Korea, for example, as was mentioned in the Washington Summit declaration issued today. They've received over 3 million artillery shells from North Korea. They've received short-range ballistic missiles, and they've also received, of course, these drones from Iran. And so I don't think your viewers should let that wash over them too quickly. We have European men, women, and children being killed in Europe by Russia using North Korean and Iranian weapons. And for the first time ever, NATO directly said, China, we see what you're doing to support Russia's defense industrial base. And if you continue this, it'll affect your interests and your reputation.
Okay, I want to ask you a bit more about the U.S. position, because we know that the U.S. is not committing to allow Ukraine to use certain long-range artillery systems, the ATACMS, as they're called, across the border in Russia. We spoke to the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the House Intelligence Committee earlier this week, and they said, look, the Ukrainians are fighting with their hands tied behind their back. But John Kirby said to us, we don't want to start World War III here. What do you make of all of that?
You know, I pushed for a year and a half to finally deliver the Army tactical missile systems to Ukraine, and belatedly, laudably, the Biden administration finally did that. And then they had this kind of constraint on them while Ukraine is getting brutalized and attacked in every way across their country. You know, you can't use them against the Russian forces attacking you. It feels a bit unfair on just kind of a human level, but I also understand the goal. I'd say the core grand strategic objective for the United States is to defeat Putin's invasion while avoiding a direct war between the U.S. and Russia. So that's the big idea behind what the Biden administration is doing. But if you're on the ground getting pulverized by these Russian missiles, it feels a little bit unreasonable to not be able to use them deep into Russia.
Understandable. What about Hungary's position there? Hungary's leader, Viktor Orban, having gone to Russia and to China and saying, look, we need to move forward with some sort of peace initiative, ceasefire talks. What do you think of that?
You know, NATO is larger with the addition of Sweden and Finland than it has been ever. It's stronger than it's been ever, and it's more unified, I'd say, than in a long, long time. But that doesn't mean there aren't problems, and we've seen some issues with Turkey, and we've seen issues with Hungary, taking positions that I think are contrary to Hungary's interests and to NATO's interests and to transatlantic interests. And so that's one of the challenges for the new Secretary General that will be coming in to try to keep this alliance unified and focused on defending its core interests.
But let's stick with that, because, again, there have been calls here in the U.S. as well to somehow bring the parties to the negotiating table. Yeah. So how is that in counter to what's in Ukraine and Hungary's interest, NATO's interest?
Yeah, I think if Putin is successful in Ukraine, he will be emboldened to continue his aggression, and we risk an attack against the alliance, which would invoke Article 5 and would involve the participation of U.S. forces and our European allies. And so I think what America and our allies do or don't do in Ukraine will affect the alliance directly, and it's going to affect what happens in the Indo-Pacific. Because just remember, Beijing, Tehran, and Pyongyang are watching, and they're looking to see, does America and its allies have the will and the fortitude to defend their core interests? And if they conclude that we don't have the political will, I think we simply invite more aggression in the future, and we'll regret it.
Okay, just about 30 seconds left, but what do you hope to see come out of this summit?
Yeah, I think there's a real focus here on increasing the alliance's posture in Eastern Europe, and they've done a lot of that already. There's new war plans where you have specific units, specific countries responsible for specific places so they can exercise it. There's an emphasis in getting all 32 members to honor their commitment to pay at least 2% of GDP. We have 23 of 32. We still have 9 countries that are not there. So there's more work to do. But this is a big deal. And here we are 75 years later after the North Atlantic Treaty was signed in April 75 years ago. And it's appropriate to be here in the U.S. And I'm optimistic and hopeful the U.S. will continue to lead the alliance.
All right. Bradley Bowman, Senior Director of the Center on Military and Political Power at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you again so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.